Today I'm going to demonstrate how to paint a very simple surreal landscape. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. For this painting, I've worked on a Fredrix Nature Core Linen paint board. The reason that I went with this board for this painting is that the acrylic paint doesn't dry quite so fast on it for whatever reason, and so I'm able to get a more oil paint type look where my brush strokes are showing, but the edges are kind of smudged into the brush stroke that was right next to it. Normally with acrylic paint, when you do that, each brush stroke dries so quickly, it's harder to get that look, but on these boards, I do find that I'm able to get that more oil paint type feel in the brush strokes, which is what I wanted for this piece. Why didn't I just use oil paint? Because I wanted something that I could finish in a single night. The acrylic paint that I used here is Liquitex Basics. I used a little bit of Liquitex heavy bodied transparent mixing white in addition to that, and a tiny bit of white createx paint. Now where I go through with the airbrush to lighten up some of this, you could do that with the transparent mixing white and have a very, very similar look. So if you're not using an airbrush, that transparent mixing white is a great alternative, at least for this style. If you are supporters over on Patreon, I do have a 1-hour version of this tutorial complete with voiceover available for you guys to watch now. Now let's get on to the demonstration. To start this painting, I am using Liquitex Basics, the titanium white and Mars black. The ivory black is going to be too translucent for this look, so avoid that one here. I've started by painting everything gray, and then I'm very, very loosely putting in where the white clouds are going to go. I'm then using a mop brush. This one is actually a blush applicator. It doesn't shed as much as the paint brushes, to soften out my clouds. I then went through with the airbrush, misted water over it to keep it all wet, and did the same thing with black to get more shadows in there. Notice that I'm using several different mop brushes. That is because when one gets wet, it doesn't work so well anymore if it picks up a lot of paint. So that is where I will switch over to a clean one. I do have a video showing you exactly how to paint wet into wet, and I will put a card that should show up somewhere on the screen so you can see how to do that. I want to pull out even more of my white clouds, so I've blocked those in there, and then I'm using the mop brush yet again to soften them out. You don't have to soften your clouds this much, but for me, for this piece, I wanted the background to be very, very soft and blurry. For the mountains, I am using green with gray, so that is the white and the black mixed together along with that gray, and that lets it kind of fade off into the background, so it makes it look like those mountains are far away. I don't want sharp, harsh edges there or bright, bright colors. As I move my way forward, I stop using the gray and start using just the yellows and the greens in the grass. This gives me that depth that I'm looking for, where everything up close is much, much brighter and everything towards the back, further away, gets foggier and foggier. I'm adding a little bit of brown in with the green as well. Notice that any of my patchy strokes are horizontal. And the nice thing with this canvas, I can get the paint dries so slow, it works so well for getting the brush strokes like I wanted here, without them being too harsh like I normally would have with acrylic. So now I am using another brush. This is a flat Taklon bristled brush that I am blocking in the cliff face. I'm just letting that be really streaky. I've got black and brown mixed together, and then white with the brown for the upper sections. I want it darker towards the bottom and lighter towards the top. And I'm, again, just leaving it streaky. You don't want to overblend this or do too many brush strokes to where you don't have your streaks showing. For once, I actually want streaks. Now I'm adding additional green on top of the green grass in the background. I let that grass dry before I added this area of green. I've also added a bit more yellow. Now I'm starting to draw in the trees. I'm just putting straight, well, kind of straight. I don't need them to be actually straight lines of where the tree trunks are going to go. Now I'll block in my little floating landmass. Now right now, the grassy area, even the brown part of that landmass, it blends in very much to the background. I'll fix that later. I've got to hype up that contrast so it really shows up. For that tree, I put a base of black first. I will end up putting lots of greens on top of it, but I need that black there first, and then I want that black to dry completely. If I were working in oil paint, I would do it the same way. I'd let that black dry before I put greens on top. Putting in my tree trunks for the landmass. While I've got that brush out in the color that I like, I just added a few touch-ups to my cliff face. Chasm face? I don't know what I want to call that. blocking in some rocks. Make sure that you don't just do round ovals or they will look like baked potatoes. The brush that I use to apply the black masses on that tree, it's a very stiff, cheap, round brush. It's one of those really inexpensive ones you get, the generic brushes from the art store. Very, very stiff bristles. I don't want that brush to be wet or it won't create the right look for those trees. I don't have a lot of paint or water on the brush for that section. Using some white airbrush paint to soften out my background even more. And I added a little bit of mist coming out of that chasm or cliff face or whatever we want to call it. Now that the black on that tree is dry, I'm going on top of it with a bad camera angle apparently, with some green mixed with yellow. And I'm doing the same thing to add the black on the other tree. Make sure that you do not just do polka dots when you do the trees like this. You want to paint in the clumps of branches and leaves. Once that's dry, I've got more of the Naples yellow with some green mixed in with it, and I dabbed that on top. Again, think in terms of clumps, not polka dots. And then Naples yellow for the highlights. Moving on to the balloons, I drew them out with a white charcoal pencil. That one is by Generals. I painted them in with red. Red is very translucent, which worked for me because I wanted these to be fairly transparent. So I've painted them with the Liquitex red. Normally when I use a lot of red, I'll switch to the heavy body because the Liquitex Basics is a little bit gooey. But these balloons were so small, I didn't need to cover a large area, so I just stuck with the Liquitex Basics for that. Then I used a liner brush to draw in the lines for the string and the Liquitex Heavy Body Transparent Mixing White for the highlights. And then for the final brightest highlight, I used opaque titanium white. And that is it. If you guys try out this painting on your own, please share it with me. I would love to see what you come up with. Thanks for watching. Again, if you are supporters over on Patreon, the 1-hour version of this video is available for you guys to watch now, complete with voiceover. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I critique your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, social media tips for artists each Thursday, and artist vlogs every weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google+, all of those social media sites. The links are below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on, which happens to be colored pencil right now. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the social media vlog. When my original idea for this painting came, my first thought was that I wanted a single red balloon that was pulling the floating tree up. But then I decided I wanted lots of balloons. Then I realized if I made it look like the balloons were actually holding the tree up, that would require very, very straight, stiff string. The problem with that was that it made it look really weird having all these straight lines sticking out all over, and it didn't have a nice flow to the piece. So I readjusted my design and went ahead and made curved string so it just looks like balloons tied to the tree instead of like they're holding the tree up. And I'm sure I will still have people complaining that I should have those straight, but trust me, it did not look good straight. It just pulled your attention in weird directions having such harsh straight lines 5 times because I wanted 5 balloons. So sometimes you have to rethink your concept just to make the overall design better. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every nope, that is not when.